Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Jeshua Encounter podcast. I am your host, Tasha Renee, and today we have the amazing, incredible Chloe Lindsey. She has had so many encounters with Jesus, Joshua, whatever you'd like to call him, that it's ridiculous. But she's been called to tell the meeting of him that was her first meeting. She's been called very strongly. Actually, she had a whole nother meeting. Or a whole nother encounter she was going to be discussing with us, and got called by him to share another one, a different one. So I'm just super excited to have her on here. And yeah, I'll let you just go ahead and get started, Chloe, and tell everybody who you are and what it is that
Okay.
you do, and just go ahead and go forward.
All right. Well, thank you. Yes, so I'm Chloe and I'm an authenticity coach. I, well, as you know, I've been through 10 near-death experiences, lost both of my parents, marriage, divorce, and all the trauma, all the things, all the spiritual experiences. I grew up in a spiritual family, not a religious one. So Jesus was never forced upon me. I kind of got to know the universe and everything. And then, always spoke Jesus's name. I would always speak his name intuitively. Like when I would as weird as it sounds, like I grew up being able to cast like demons out and do things like I was doing those things at a young age. I had to do that on my mother a couple of times. And it was just like that was my reality, right? Like I grew up with that being the norm. But never like I always felt Jesus in my just in my being of this unconditional love, but I didn't know him the way that religion taught him. Um, and I just knew him in this unconditional love that I knew. And so I but I never didn't know until I was very suicidal growing up. With my mom had psychosis and was in and out of psych wards, and I would have to take care of her. And she would hallucinate and see crazy things all the time. But I believe that was her perspective and everything. But I was at 17, I was 16. I was so I was so sad. I was so done through all of the trauma, all of the pain, raising my brother, having to drop out of school, having to get a job at 17 and start taking care of the elderly and the disabled. I was so exhausted. But right before that, I broke down. And I remember thinking I was by myself. And my brother was at school and my mom was in the psych ward, and my stepdad at the time was at his girlfriend's house, and I had already had to drop out of school to take care of Matthew and my mom. And um I was done. I was so done. And I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the way through. I was like, this is too much. And I went into my stepdad's gun safe, and I went outside because I remember thinking, well, I don't want my mom to have to clean up anything, or anybody have to see anything. So I remember we lived on 10 acres. And I remember kind of going out underneath some apple trees. And um, I had the gun up to my head, and I had almost did it. And right as I was going to do it, I heard 15 voices at the same time fiercely tell me, don't stop, and to turn the gun and shoot. And that's what I did. And as soon as I did, I felt like this release off of my, out of my heart space or something. And I felt like I came back to myself. And I was like, oh, I remember falling to the ground going, oh my God, what was I just about to do? I was in a dark place because I had lost my dad, and I had to try to revive him at 13, and losing my uncle to suicide, and my grandma. There was just so much change. I couldn't take it anymore. But I remember at that point just dropping the gun and then going back inside, putting the gun in the safe, and then going into the kitchen and just falling to the ground. And I was all alone at 16 years old, just all alone, just falling on the ground, just about killed myself. And this like yellow, like the most bright yellow, like beam of light just like shined through the window. And it wrapped itself around me like a blanket. And I felt the greatest, most intense love I had felt in my entire life. And I heard, "You are not alone. It is going to be okay."
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, if this is what God's love feels like for 5 minutes, I will do whatever I can to be the best human I can to get to be a part of that again. And so that's why I've always tried to be just the most kind person to myself and others that I can be. So that was my first, like, most life-changing experience with Jesus.
I love it. So beautiful. Wow. What a powerful fucking story, Chloe. I'm so glad you're here and you didn't do that. I know that you've had massive confirmations of that over and over again. How grateful the world is to have you and your light and all it is that you do. I think it's just so absolutely incredibly beautiful.
Thank you. I just really try to love like Jesus because that love is so good. It is so good. It is so good.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's definitely healing, and it's definitely not, if there's one thing I keep hearing in these episodes is that, sorry, got a phone call. In these episodes is that he comes across, so not that you actually saw Jesus, like actually saw his face and like, that type of encounter, but
it was too bright for me to see.
Oh, yeah. No. I just mean that feeling is the same. Everybody talks about this overwhelming feeling of love that is him, that is, some people think of God and Jesus as the same entity too. So, which they are,
but also,
yeah, but it's the same description, that overwhelming,
right?
So I just think that's so beautiful that literally everybody,
it's soulgasmic. It's like it's so much. It's just too much. It's too much for it's too much for the human heart.
It is too much for the human body. That's why they say that you can't see God in physical form, because we could not our physical bodies can't handle it. It literally, and I'll tell you why. The message that I got was because we come from that. So what ends up happening is our bodies actually end up starting to try to pull apart to literally go back home, go back to that thing. So it's trying to literally like go back to where we really come from and what we come from. So that's why we can't handle it. It's the fact that we're just trying to go back to it. So it's like
no, that's exactly correct. Exactly. And actually the video I want to do about my last near death with that is that it's exactly yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I have this really amazing, incredible story. I don't think she'll mind that I'll tell it since we don't really talk anymore. If she does, I don't think she would be. If I know her correctly, she wouldn't give a shit sharing any of this. I had a best friend it was kind of a short story, which was totally fine. I have a best friend who's probably the most psychic person I've ever met in my entire life. She could full on see people like as if you were standing here. She was wildly gifted. And a lot of her family had passed over, and her father, who she was very, very close to, she could see everything for everybody else, but she couldn't see her father because she'd get too emotional basically. And it's really difficult for souls to be here in physical form. And when our energy is so, I need you, I miss you, the emotions, it makes it twice as hard, 10 times as hard, however you want to look at it, for them to be here. So it's like almost impossible for him to show up to her in the ways that she's been able to see everybody else, right? So she ended up with this boyfriend who didn't believe in anything she did. None of it. He was like, I love you. I believe that you believe, but I don't believe in any of that. Never had an experience in my life, blah, blah, blah. And they were sitting down in a room, and all of a sudden he goes, there's a man standing behind you. And she was like, what are you talking about? And she turned and she's like, he's like, you don't see the man that's standing behind you? She's like, no. So the psychic can't see him. And the man who believes in nothing can see him perfectly all of a sudden. And so through a series of questions, we figure out it's her father that's come through her boyfriend. And when she finally realized that and got herself calm enough, she tells I wish she was here to tell it because it's just so much better the way she tells it. But basically what happens is the whole room on the other side was a big wall, and the whole room completely opened up and she could literally see on the other side, which she's able to see anyways. But this was like, his name was Justin. Justin could see everything as well. And she said that God was there and started to come in, and her whole body started to have this like visceral like reaction. She's like, I finally understood what it was like, because it was this overwhelming sense of love that I never wanted to separate from. And it was almost painful to be there and experience, because it was like the love goes to a message I'm getting, and kind of how she described it is when you reach the peak of love, it then turns to pain because it's got to go somewhere, and then it keeps circling.
Yes, that's exactly yes. Yes, that's exactly
because energy can't go away. It just has to keep turning into something else.
Right. That's life and death.
I literally just got that message. I've never ever said that before. And she kind of described it that way, but that was really kind of my message of like, that's what happens, is like, so that's why it becomes painful, and we have to go into something else. So yeah, so that story was like my favorite, like was like, but Jocelyn, tell me the story about when you saw God, like, you know, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever fucking heard in my life.
That's why I always say it's soulgasmic. It's soulgasmic. Like, it's too much. It's so good. It's so good, and then it becomes so painful. That's whenever they said it's too much for the human heart. Only when you're fully healed can you go back to that. Yeah. But it's still too much. But it feels so good. But it hurts.
Yeah, it's really an interesting thing, but yeah, so kind of awesome.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I'm like that yes, that's this. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and she
did
some crazy shit. Like, she literally sold her soul to the fucking dark side, to the devil, to be with this singer that she had contact with, and then had to renounce that and bring God back into her life, and all kinds of things. So it was a very interesting cycle that she went on, being so close to that side, and then literally selling her soul to like be with this person, and then having it come back again to him, or to them, I should say. So yeah, pretty interesting stories. And, you know, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share him and what you're feeling with us. Those of you that are watching, if you want to, or listening, I guess, either way, the way to keep listening to us obviously is we have a YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify, we do have a YouTube channel. We can watch this as a video. You can just search the Jeshua podcast, I believe is what it's under on YouTube. And if you're watching and want to listen, it's on Spotify as the Jeshua Encounter podcast. So yeah. Also, for those of you that are interested, I help women, well, men too, but I'm trying to change it into saying people. I help people heal and remove trauma through their sacred rage. And yeah, that's something I've been doing for a little over 2 years. So if you have any type of resonance with that, or it's pulling at you, let me know. sisterhoodofsacredfire.com. Or Sisterhood of Sacred Fire on Instagram, or on Facebook. You can find me under Tasha Renee. So Chloe, how do they get a hold of you, and what do you do exactly?
I am an authenticity coach. I help everybody to be their most authentic, unapologetic, unfuckwithable selves. Yes. You can find me on anywhere, Facebook as Chloe Lindsey, or Soul to Soul Connections, or on Instagram as Soul to Soul Connections as well.
You said Soul to Soul Connections, right?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. And that's SOULTO, or with a 2?
SOUL2. Yeah.
The number
soul
2?
2. So yeah.
The number 2. Okay.
Soul to Soul. Yeah.
Okay. Connection. Perfect. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well,
all right. Thank you for having me.
Definitely, obviously, have you on here again, because you know, you have many other stories of me.
God, it doesn't stop. I got you
Yeah,
for
so
days.
thank you
I
for
love
joining
you.
us.
That's it.
Yes, and thank you
Thank you
everyone
for
for
having
joining
me.
us. If you also have a story where you've met Jesus, you can also email us at the Joshua. I just said Joshua. Lovely. It's my ex's name. The Jeshua podcast at gmail.com. Just remove Joshua from there. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. We drop episodes every Sunday.
Bye.